History remembers the great emperors, the warriors, the conquerors, the legends. But what if I told you their greatest strength wasn't on the battlefield, but in their own homes? For centuries, history has overlooked them. Queens, consorts, and empresses who shaped entire empires from behind the throne. Women whose whispers carried more weight than swords. Women who built legacies and erased enemies. What if I told you that without them, some of the most powerful rulers in history wouldn't have survived a single day? Get ready, because today, we're uncovering the hidden masterminds of history. Great empires are built on power, strategy, and war. But what if I told you some of history's most powerful rulers weren't the ones sitting on the throne, but the ones standing beside it? For centuries, queens, consorts, and empresses held more influence than history admits. They weren't just advisors, they were the architects of empires. These women didn't just influence their husbands or sons. They controlled diplomacy, led military strategies, and even ruled in their own right. Their power wasn't always obvious. Sometimes it was whispered in royal chambers, other times it was written into law, and sometimes it was won through blood. But who were these women? And how did they rise to power in a world ruled by men? Some ruled with crowns, others ruled with whispers, but all of them shaped history in ways the world was never meant to remember. Let's meet the women who didn't just stand behind the throne. They controlled it. Forget the Hollywood love story. Cleopatra wasn't just seducing Roman generals. She was playing chess while everyone else played checkers. She spoke 9 languages, negotiated with Rome's most powerful men, and nearly made Egypt the ruler of the Mediterranean. But in the end, even a queen can be outplayed. When Emperor Gaozu of Han died, his widow Lu Zhi wasn't about to fade into the background. Instead, she became China's true ruler. And she didn't just remove her enemies, she erased them. Her cruelty was legendary. Some say she fed a rival's body to the palace dogs. Others say she ruled with an iron grip because she had to. Either way, her name still sends shivers down the spine of history. Most empresses were expected to sit quietly in silk robes. Theodora, she saved the Byzantine Empire from total destruction. As the empire crumbled around them, her husband, Emperor Justinian, was ready to escape. But Theodora looked him in the eye and said, "A ruler who flees is no ruler at all." And she was right. Because of her, Byzantium didn't just survive, it thrived. Ancient Egypt had a rule: only men could be pharaoh. Hatshepsut's response? Watch me. She ruled for over 20 years, brought Egypt into a golden age, and then history tried to erase her. Literally. But power like hers, it doesn't just disappear. When Alexander the Great died, his empire shattered. But Roxana? She wasn't just his wife, she was the mother of his only heir. And that made her dangerous. She fought for her son's throne, but in a world of ruthless generals, survival was impossible. Her fate sealed the moment Alexander took his last breath. Powerful, fearless, ruthless. These women didn't just support empires, they built them. But in a world ruled by men, their legacies came at a cost. And that is what we'll uncover next. Power isn't just about holding a throne, it's about knowing how to keep it. These women didn't just survive in a world ruled by men, they controlled it. And they did it with 3 weapons: alliances, influence, and fear. To the world, it was a wedding. To them, it was a contract. A well-placed marriage could turn an enemy into an ally or a pawn. Cleopatra, she didn't just marry, she seduced the rulers of the world's greatest empire. First Julius Caesar, then Mark Antony, using romance as a weapon. Roxana, by marrying Alexander the Great, she secured a claim to the most powerful empire on earth. But after his death, that marriage became a death sentence. Empress Lu Zhi, she was the wife of China's first Han emperor. But when he died, her position didn't weaken, it grew stronger. But in the game of power, love was never enough. Control meant having a voice in war, law, and the very fate of an empire. They weren't just consorts, they were lawmakers, strategists, rulers in all but name. Theodora, she rewrote Byzantine laws, giving women more rights, banning forced prostitution, and even deciding imperial policies. Lu Zhi, after her husband's death, she controlled the empire, replacing generals and eliminating threats. Hatshepsut, she didn't just rule Egypt, she led military campaigns and diplomatic missions, proving she was more than just a placeholder for a future king. But control isn't just about politics. The smartest rulers knew power had to be seen. Rulers fade, but monuments, Stories? They last forever. Hatshepsut, she built some of the most magnificent temples in Egypt, ensuring her name would be remembered even when others tried to erase it. Cleopatra, she positioned herself as the living goddess Isis, securing the loyalty of her people through religious propaganda. Theodora, she was immortalized in Byzantine mosaics, depicted as Justinian's equal, a message to the world that she was no mere consort. They built their own legacies. But history wasn't always kind to them. Why did history try to erase them? This is the next chapter of our story. After their deaths, their enemies, sometimes even their own successors, rewrote history to fit their own narratives. Hatshepsut, after ruling Egypt for over 20 years, her name and face were violently erased from monuments, as if she had never existed. Lu Zhi, later Chinese historians painted her as a villain, a woman too ruthless to be remembered with honor. Cleopatra, Roman accounts, written by her enemies, reduced her to a seductress rather than a strategist. They weren't just erased, they were rewritten, turned into villains, temptresses, or mere footnotes in the stories of the men around them. When a man seizes power, he's called a genius. When a woman does it, she's called a monster. Empress Lu Zhi, her political brilliance was overshadowed by gruesome rumors, like the tale of her feeding a rival to dogs. But were these stories true or convenient? Theodora, Roman historians labeled her as a former courtesan, downplaying the fact that she co-ruled an empire. Cleopatra, instead of being remembered as a shrewd diplomat, she became the femme fatale of history. History wasn't just unkind to them, it feared them. But here's the thing, this pattern didn't stop in the ancient world. Women in power still faced scrutiny. Their decisions questioned more than their male counterparts. Their stories are often rewritten, their accomplishments downplayed. And even today, history is still being shaped by those who write it. But what if we told their stories the way they deserve to be told? What if we remembered them, not as shadows behind great men, but as the rulers they truly were? How many more stories have been erased? And if history has taught us anything, what will they try to erase next? History isn't just about the past. It shapes how we see the present and how we imagine the future. The tactics may have changed, but the pattern hasn't. Even today, powerful women face resistance, their decisions dissected more harshly, their legacies questioned. Just like Theodora shaped Byzantine law, modern women fight for policy changes that redefine society. Just like Cleopatra used diplomacy, today's leaders navigate alliances and power struggles. And just like history tried to erase Lu Zhi, Hatshepsut, and Roxana, many women's contributions still go unrecognized. What we remember and what we forget shapes the way we see power. And if we don't challenge these stories, history will keep repeating itself. But we can change that. We can bring these stories back to life. And it starts with conversations like this one. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these women's stories surprised you the most? And why do you think history feared them so much? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you found this video eye-opening, hit that like button. It helps more people see this story. And if you love uncovering the hidden truths of history, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video like this one. Behind every great leader, past and present, there's a story history often forgets, but we won't. Thanks for watching. Now let's rewrite history together.